All right, gang. This is going to be kind of an exhaustive tutorial. I don't know. Stumbling through of OBS. And I'm going to walk you through from the get-go. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually delete this scene so that I can start where you would start when you actually installed OBS. So I'll delete that, and I'll be right back. Essentially back at where you would be had you just installed OBS and opened it. It will, by default, create a blank scene. And just before we get into creating each scene and the sources therein, we'll just kind of give a quick overview. I'll try to get through this as quickly as I can. There are a lot of options that we won't go over, but I'm going to walk you through the basic ones that I think most folks will need to get going. So as you go left to right, you'll see scenes here. A scene is essentially what you're going to cut to. So it's going to have your camera, it's going to have your audio source, maybe it'll have a media file, a movie or something that you're going to play, but you'll be cutting between those. So if you have multiple cameras, one scene will be that camera plus its audio. The next will be, another scene will be a different camera. Another scene will be a movie you want to play back. So each one of those things is built up with sources. The audio mixer comes into play as you add sources that have audio. By default, we will set up today having a default audio, but there may be multiple audio sources within each scene. Scene transitions, that's just literally how long it, if you want it to fade or just cut between different scenes. I like mine to fade. I've set it at 300 milliseconds, which I think might be the default setting. Then over to controls, which we'll spend some time in real quick. Let's go down to settings. So very quick, I've left all of my general settings by default. If you click down to stream, it's kind of self-explanatory, the service that you're using, if you're using Facebook or if you're using YouTube or if you're using Restream to send to both or to more than those two, Twitch. Most folks, you'll find the service you're using here. If you don't, you'll choose custom and you'll have to consult the folks that the service you're using to get that stuff correct. Server will be default for almost everyone. The thing that you will have to get from that service, Facebook, YouTube, will be the stream key, and you'll copy that into this, and that provides the access you need to your Facebook page or your YouTube page or whatever. Output. I would suggest if you haven't already gone through this, that you stay on simple for a bit. Facebook's video bit rate caps out at 6,000, so most folks won't need to be above that. If you're in simple mode, depending on your computer, you may or may not have a software versus a hardware option here. I don't have hardware option under simple, so I'm sticking with software. For my encoder, I've selected 192 for my bit rate here, although you'll see down at the bottom, Facebook will cap it at 128. 192, I've got in there just for going to YouTube and whatnot. I haven't noticed any kind of a issue having this set to the higher one, but if you really wanted to just go to Facebook, 128 is your highest you can go. Depending on your computer, you'll want to set your encoder preset anywhere between ultra fast and slower. Because I'm doing two very weird and different video things today, I'm on fast. Normally I could be set to ultra fast on this machine, which is a 6-core i7 Mac with plenty of RAM. But today we're in fast. Obviously, the higher you go, the better it might look, because it's not just up to your machine. As we go down your recording settings, this is going to be great for testing out things. It'll be great for creating content that you play back rather than create live, or that you can create live, record, and play back. Set your recording path the same way you would select a place to save a file. You browse, you choose preferably something that's not on your system drive, but if that's all you have, then you'll choose a folder there. I would suggest the recording quality be the same as stream so you can see what's going on, and that your recording format you change to MP4 if you're on a Mac. I believe by default it's MKV, but you have to have a special software to play that back. The only disadvantage of changing to MP4 is if you're streaming live and you lose your connection, your recording will stop. That's not really a problem for me, so MP4 it is. Moving along, audio. By default, probably everything will be disabled in this middle section here on devices except mic/auxiliary audio. That might be on default. This is going to be where today at least we set up our default audio interface. For me, that is my recording interface. That is Universal Audio Thunderbolt, so I will choose that. I also like to leave my sample rate at 48K, which is kind of the video standard. And then the only other place that really you need to be concerned with is down here under advanced, your monitoring device. You want that to also be your main interface that you're using your headphones, your monitors with. So select that. For me, that's universal audio. Moving along, video. Right now, my video is set to 1920 by 1080 for both bass and output, as well as 30 for my frames per second. Normally, I'd change that to 60, but again, I'm kind of up against a wall recording this OBS session as well as running OBS itself. So Facebook will cap out at 1280 by 720 for most people, but I still believe if you send it a higher, if your internet will support sending it a higher resolution and frame rate, I think that once it does its terrible magic and compresses that signal, you still get a better end result. Hotkeys, we're not going to get into, but you can essentially do just about anything you'd want to do by assigning any kind of hotkey, which is actually an advantage that OBS has over Ecamm Live. You can select a hotkey, and that can be really great. I'm not going to get in this today, but I basically have hotkeys set up through a MIDI pedal, so I'm able to do it on the floor and actually wirelessly in my case. And then unadvanced, I've never changed anything, so I won't get into any of that. All these settings seem to work for me. You'll hit apply. The one thing that will change when we hit apply, you'll see the audio that we've selected will come up under the audio mixer window. So I'll hit apply. You've just seen that guy pop up. I'm now talking to OBS. I'll hit OK. And now let's build our first scene. So my first scene is just going to be my main camera, the one that I started this video with, which is my Canon M50. By default, it creates a blank scene for you. So if you right-click, which is a very popular move in OBS, right-click, I'll hit rename. I'll change it to M50. And rather than hit return, because if you hit return, it changes back to the same name. I don't know why. Rename, M50, and then click off. It creates it. Still blank, nothing in the source. Now we will add sources to that scene, whatever we want. So usually that will include a video and an audio source. For audio, we've already got our default audio that's happening in real time. So we'll basically just be adding a video source. So you get all these options when you hit the plus button down below sources. Don't be intimidated. They're all fairly self-explanatory. If you don't know what one thing means, well, you're not going to break anything by clicking on it, but chances are it's not what you need anyway. For most cameras, whether the webcams or DSLRs running through capture cards or whatever else, video capture devices are going to be your go-to. You can select a name for this, and I'm going to do that just so I can show you one little trick later. I'm going to call it M50A for me, and hit OK, and then you will actually select where it is. For me, this is on a capture card, a little USB adapter basically, right here. So when I select that, you'll notice that that it doesn't fill up the whole screen behind this window. It's only filling up partial screen. It's because by default it comes up as 1280 by 720. So I will switch that to high. I don't know why it doesn't say 1080, but it doesn't. And now it's the whole screen. For most folks with a single camera and a single audio source, you should be in sync. I will real quick show you. If you click over here, just below the LEDs in this meter, you'll see several things, one of which is advanced audio properties. If you're using a regular interface, most USB Thunderbolt firewire interfaces will come up in an application as OBS by default as the first two channels. So if you have a microphone plugged into channel 1 and a guitar plugged into channel 2, chances are they're coming up 1 on the left-hand side and 2 on the right-hand side. Here in advanced audio properties, you can choose mono. That way they'll both be centered up. I'm running a slightly different thing, so I have it out. Another thing you might see here is that under audio monitoring, it's turned off. That's probably what you want, because otherwise you're going to be hearing the source coming in to OBS. So the way it's actually leaving OBS, there's going to be a delay on it. It'll be slight, possibly, hopefully, but it's still too much to deal with. So the only thing you're going to turn on as far as monitoring are going to be sources like movies, things like that. There's always exceptions to these things I'm throwing out, but in general, you'll and by default, actually, for most of these things, it'll come up off. So just real quick, like I'm going to set up a couple other cameras that I have here, so under their own scenes. So I'm going to go down, hit the plus button. I'll name this T2i, which is another Canon camera I have here, but it's set up in a slightly different way. So this particular camera is set up via USB with through a little applet running called Camera Live, and so it's actually what they call a siphon client. So it's slightly different, but I'll name it the same way, T2i. I'll hit OK. It's already in use. T2i A. I guess you can't name a source and a scene the same thing. And then our sources, I'll choose that camera, and it does the same thing. It comes up in not as big as it needs to be. But you know what? That's pretty easy peasy, folks. Right, chow? Every camera, depending on how you're connecting, it's going to be a little bit different. And again, you're going to be seeing all sorts of video artifacts and things that aren't nice because of what I'm doing here, but hopefully that'll be overcome by the fantastic amount of information that you're gleaning. I'll set up one last camera. This will be this T5i right here, so I'll hit Add, under Scenes, T5i, and this is coming through its own video capture card. So I will go to Video Capture Device. I will call this T5IA. And then I will select that device, which I believe is called USB Live Camera. No, that's a different thing. USB camera. There we go. And then on this one, I'm given an option, so I'll choose high. This is getting into the weeds, but I've actually got a thing running on the camera that'll give me a slightly better resolution. So we'll go to high. You can see that the way that this camera operates, you'll see right here that there are black bars on the sides, which I don't want, which means I have to expand the whole frame out a bit, which is a bit of a pain. And then you can move the frame around. This is for close-up guitar scenes. So let's just say these are our three camera angles we want to use for this thing. Right now, they're all sharing the same audio source, so if for some reason I had a different audio interface that I wanted to add, I could add it to each one of these individually. I actually run my audio a slightly different way. I don't run a default audio source. So I'm going to show you that real quick, just so you can get the other basic way of doing audio. If you go back into Settings, and you go to Audio, you will disable. So now, once I apply, you saw that the LED down here has disappeared. The benefit in doing this is that for each audio device, for each scene rather, I can add whatever I want specifically. Now I can copy and paste anything I create in terms of a source. So if I create an audio input capture source for this first scene, I'll call this Apollo 1 because it's my Apollo interface. And then choose what it is. I'll choose the Apollo and hit OK. And you see that it's not only added it here to the source, but it's actually added the audio mixer here. Now, if I wanted to, I could choose that. I could right-click on it and hit Copy. Go to my next scene, click on a blank space and put Paste Reference, and boom, it comes up there. But let's just say I wanted to use that same audio interface, but I needed the levels to be different. I'm going to remove it. I would click on the blank space. I would do the same thing. Add audio input capture to my second scene. Choose the same device and hit OK. Well, what's happened? Let's see here. Oh, I didn't name it. I went too quickly. I'm going to go back and rename. Right-click is your friend. Apollo 2. Now, why would you do that? Let's just say, for instance, that I knew I had to sing loud on the second song. You can use this fader that's under this LED to adjust the level. Now, for this recording, you're hearing a direct off the mic recording, but you can see in the LEDs that as I go down with that fader, it drops. So let's say I had to sing something super close on this one. I might want to drop it down. When I go back to the first scene, you'll see this fader jump back up. Boom. And even though graphically it takes a minute to show you that, it's pretty seamless in terms of fading from one to the next. So on this third, I'm going to actually undo that. Let's just say I'm going to go back. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to basically remove by hitting the minus button that audio source. And then I'm going to copy from the first audio source, Audio Apollo 1. I'm going to apply it to both of these other scenes. So now if I scroll through, you'll see that it's the same source. Now, if I change the level on one, that's going to apply across the board because it's actually just taking the same exact one. You can't change between those levels. So that's pretty handy to know, especially as you get more advanced in terms of your audio routing. I have sometimes 15 different scenes, depending on what I'm doing, and wildly different audio settings and devices going on. So let's just say that we're good. We've got all the scenes we want, and maybe we're trying to match these a little bit better. Now, best thing to do is match on your camera, of course, but let's just say one of these was a webcam or something where I didn't have options inside the camera. There are a few different apps. I'll drag one over. This app is called Webcam Settings Panel. If you do have a webcam, it's got a lot of options, but it really depends on the exact webcam you've got, whether or not you'll be able to use and access all of them. But if you don't, there are some options here. So let's choose this T5i shot. It's a little bit darker than the other two. Choose the T5IA. Right click, always your friend in OBS filters. In this bottom here, if you hit the plus button, you'll see a bunch of different options for effects that you can apply in real time. Now, these are going to take a toll somewhat on your processor, but depending on your machine, you might be able to add them. So I'm going to hit color correction. I'm going to hit OK, and then you get a bunch of different options. So if we just adjust that gamma up just a hair, brightens it up a little bit. And then we hit close. Now we're a little closer. So you can go through some of those effects. Not the very best way to do it. It does take a toll on the processor, but depends on what you have. Once you are all golden and you're ready to stream, you're ready to do the thing, you will go back to your settings. Once you check in with Facebook or YouTube or whatever else and you have the correct stream key, you will come here, delete whatever's in there, copy whatever's in there, or whatever you've copied from Facebook or YouTube, and then hit OK. I don't have anything, so sadly I'm putting nothing into that. And then you'll hit start streaming. Obviously I don't have a stream key going here, but if I did, what should start happening is you should start streaming to Facebook. Now Facebook in its window is going to show you that it's receiving that signal. You'll see it usually, if you're on a personal page, it'll be in the lower right-hand corner of that window. And then whenever you're ready to actually start, you can hit go live and you'll be off to the races. There's a whole lot more about this app that you're able to do. You're able to customize. It's pretty deep, but that should be a pretty good starting point. And then you can dive deeper into all the options. Hope you found it useful. Cheers.